Hello there. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first ever live stream for the OMCI. I am your host tonight, Braden Folks. I am a content creator for the OMCI, as well as a musician and a broadcaster. So, perfect guy to be doing this for you. And we are joined tonight with our artist panel of musicians. We have Kelsey Main, one of 3 finalists in SiriusXM's nationwide Top of the Country contest, with a previous single, Taking You Home, getting over 450,000 Spotify plays, and the attention of Rogers Hometown Hockey, which looks like the best concert I've ever seen, as well as a new single, As I Go, with a music video teaser that gained over 1.2 million views on TikTok in under 24 hours. Kelsey Main. We have Rob Watts. He is the frontman of the Rob Watts Band that formed in 2015 and since has opened for country music acts like Thomas Rhett, Brett Young, Aaron Pritchett, Jason McCoy and the Roadhammers, the Washboard Union, Megan Patrick, George Canyon, Dan Davidson, and many more, as well as playing the main stage at Boots and Hearts. Everybody knows and loves that festival around here. And we have Tori Hathaway, one of Canada's youngest Factor JSR recipients at age 15, which is wild. She has become a seasoned veteran and has been the driving force behind her artist business since 2012 and has been an internationally touring member of the AFM Local 149 since the age of 15. She's the youngest recipient of the Governor General Mikhail Jean Young Arts Entrepreneur Award and the founder of this great organization, OMCI, the Ontario Musicians Co-operative, Inc., which I should tell you is a non-for-profit art service organization dedicated to assisting new generation and other independent artists to build sustainable careers intersecting with the music industry in the 24th century. So we have Tori Hathaway with us, and joining us later will be Owen Lee. He's an artist, musician, songwriter, vocal arranger, and producer from Toronto. He has collaborated with numerous critically acclaimed artists such as Classified, Haley Smalls, Savannah Ray, Sunreal, Rich Kid, Maestro Fresh, Wes, and he was the former vocal director arranger for Brian Hamilton and Divine Worship. So one hell of a music panel to get your questions to tonight. We're going to get to the questions real soon, but I think the best way to set the mood for this kind of Q&A would be to have a song. So we're going to get Rob to start us off with a good country tune.
Thanks, Braden. I appreciate that. I'm going to play a little new one that I wrote not too long ago. Lots of time on my hands lately, so here's a new one. It's called Keep It Casual. Baby, I kind of like what we have to know what it is, but I'm okay with that. When you call, I know what I gotta do. Get in my car and head to you. We can keep it casual, run around together. Be well enough alone, never say the word forever. We don't have to put a label on it. Kinda like it this way, if I'm honest. So have to be love at first sight kind of thing. 6 months in and I buy you a ring. Talking about a family and growing old, baby, I don't want that if you don't. We can keep it casual. We can keep it casual. And there's a fire that we have for each other, but we both know that we're better off as lovers. When your name lights up my phone, it's calling. We both know you ain't falling. We can keep it casual, run around together. Be well enough alone, never say the word forever. We don't have to put a label on it. Kinda like it this way, if I'm honest. It's so meant to be love at first sight kind of thing. 6 months in and I buy you a ring. Talking about a family and growing old, baby, I don't want that if you don't. We can keep it casual. We can keep it casual. There ain't no pressure, I just wanna do whatever you wanna do. This ain't the last time you'll be calling my phone, girl, you know it's true. You know it's true. We can keep it casual, keep running around together. Be well enough alone, never say the word forever. We don't have to put a label on it. Kinda like it this way, if I'm honest. This don't have to be love at first sight kind of thing. 6 months in and I buy you need a going. Oh, baby, I don't want that it be done. We can keep it casual. We can keep it casual. We can keep it casual. We can keep it casual.
Woo!
Amazing.
Thank you.
Keep it casual
Woo!
by Rob.
Keep it casual.
Now we are gonna, I figured, just jump into these questions here, and you guys can answer whichever questions you feel kind of suits your journey through music best. Now, this first question comes from an emerging artist. They say, I'm a writer, so I've been learning a lot about the experience of publishing. And I know in the publishing world, there's a very long timeline between getting your book signed to getting from a firm, and then getting it on the shelves. Is releasing an album similar in that regard? What's been your experience with getting an album out there in terms of timelines and landmarks and within that?
That's a great question. I think I'm not personally suited, I don't think, to that question, because I have an EP out, but not any sort of album. Can either of you speak to that?
Kelsey, I know you just released an album.
I just released my first album. That took about 3 years for me to make, at least. So it's between writing the songs, and I think I wrote probably like 150 songs to choose my top 11 for this album. So that takes a while to write, and then to pick the songs, and every step kind of has a ton of thought that's put into it. So and then it's recording and also saving up enough money to record as well, because that can be an expensive venture. So and as a musician, you're working part-time with whatever jobs to fill in any of the gaps. So sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes shorter, but for me, it took 3 years for this album.
And I think there's also something to be said about setting up a marketing campaign to support the album release as well, which takes, umpteen months in order to really prepare your stuff, whether it's photo, sessions and that kind of thing, getting yourself prepared so that you're really perfectly supported when you do drop the album.
Yeah, I know for myself, the first release I did, I started writing for it when I was 14, and we ended up releasing it when I was 16. So that was about 2 years in the making. I didn't write 150 songs. It was more like 60, but that's like so many songs. But the process of actually going from writing the songs to getting a rough demo, getting the beds, finalizing the vocals, going through the mixing and mastering process. And then on top of that, like Rob mentioned, you have the graphic design, building the marketing campaign, you have like the prep for releasing the album. You need to leave enough time that you get buzz going for it. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the 18-month album cycle following that as well.
Right. So you guys touched on some of the struggles there are with recording and getting albums out there. Every career has like obstacles you have to go through, but I feel that the music industry has a bit more than that. And I was wondering what kind of obstacles you as musicians and touring artists and recording artists have had to overcome in your career that were kind of unexpected.
I know for me, a big one is the money. Absolutely. Like the cost of being an artist and touring and making an album is so significant. And the revenue sources coming from being an artist, especially in the beginning, are not enough to sustain that. So like the financial background of all of the work that you do was a pretty significant barrier for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And also time. I think for me, the biggest obstacle has been having enough time to do everything, like from booking your own shows to, doing album covers, like creating your own artwork, and then like doing your social media. And so it's finding and then writing your music and performing it and trying to perfect your and hone your craft, you know. So it's more than just being an artist. It's about being, you know, a business person's marketing, you know, all that stuff that you don't see behind the scenes.
And to touch on that too, the networking side of it, going into the business person's kind of thing. I think like the networking thing that you're going around and you're trying to meet everybody in your industry so that you can create yourself sort of this position and get in front of as many faces as you can that may help you with connections. And that takes so much time. It takes so much planning to be in the right place at the right time, and it takes luck, and you can't just like buy that. So that sucks. But you know, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. Yeah. And it's never ending. It doesn't just end one day when you're like, okay, like the work's done. Like it only gets harder and more in depth, but it gets more rewarding.
So we have another emerging artist question, and this one, it says, could one of you explain the process you go through when trying to get booked at a festival you have no connections in, when you don't know anyone doing bookings and you're just doing it cold?
Again, with the networking, like getting in front of people as much as you can.
Right.
Sorry, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Okay. I know this is something that I feel like I've been very fortunate in. And each show is booked completely different than another one. Like there's not, for me, there hasn't been one source of where I've been getting my gigs. Like some come from playing like a little tiny thing and people see it and then they book you for something else. Some of them come from actually cold calling or cold emailing. A lot of festivals, their sites, it's a lot of kind of investigation work because their sites don't say contact here to book. Like it has to, you have to see behind and like Google. So sometimes it takes me hours just to find like one contact for a festival. And it's just kind of like digging in and actually picking up the phone. That's when I've gotten the most breakthroughs, is people will tend to answer your phone calls more than your emails.
So the next question is, since that it seems that music is kind of trending in less money for recordings, where do you guys see the music industry going in the next few years with respects to indie artists self-releasing and doing their own do-it-yourself recordings? Do you see that becoming more of the trend or less?
I can jump on this one. No, okay. I was going to say, before the COVID-19 thing happened, everybody was pretty much expecting that touring was the place to make money. You didn't make money off of the music anymore. It was selling tickets and playing live shows where you made money. But with the entire social situation changing with COVID-19, it's not super easy to predict how that's going to change over the next year or 5 years. Like people being comfortable with going to festivals or how festivals run in the first place. So in terms of having that like locked in revenue source, we don't know how that's going to change, but that's what it was before. I don't know if you want to go on that, Rob.
Yeah, I would also like to touch on the fact that because of technology getting so easily accessible to everyone, I think there's a lot more people experimenting with recording at home and sort of trying to become a producer in their own rights and sort of get sort of experimental with their music. And I think that is going to cause a lot more like personal releases, personal produced stuff. So I think that in terms of where the industry is going to go in the future, I think that there will be so many more garage production sort of stuff or basement produced, self-produced sort of indie artists. I definitely think that'll be a huge thing. Also because we just spent how many months inside, and everyone's like, I don't know what to do with my time, so I might as well do this.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think with streaming and just the availability that is to the music consumer now, it's so easy to look up new music, and it's just so accessible now. So I think it's totally in favor of the independent artist.
Do you guys see that the music industry has changed a lot since COVID has happened, or has this kind of been the steady progression anyways?
Based on shows, I think it's changed a lot because obviously there's basically no touring income except for these drive-in shows that are starting to pop up, specifically in country. I don't know about anything else, but I know that obviously that was a huge, as Tori touched on, that was a huge landscape for artists like us to be able to draw an income. And now that we're not doing that, yes, we're trying to find other ways to make money, whether it's like, 5-person social distancing parties and stuff like that. Like we're trying to find ways to keep afloat right now. So yes, I think yeah.
Nobody really knows how this is going to change the music industry, but in the long term, I think one of the things in my experiences with other artists is that the recognition of the impact of social media for a lot of independent artists is becoming more significant now that there aren't like other routes, like the idea of, well, I don't really need social media as long as I'm booking shows, right? That doesn't exist anymore. So the need for social media, I think, for a lot of people has shifted in that sense. So it's not just the big guys and the artists who are booking festivals. I think for everybody, the landscape has kind of shifted.
So this next question comes from another emerging artist, and obviously because of COVID, it's making this thing even more difficult, but I'm sure there's going to be a resurgence of live music whenever this thing all blows over, or whatever you want to call it. But they would like to know how to go about scouting for venues or to create a tour to get a cycle of shows to line up perfectly, especially when you don't know many venues or musicians outside of your area. They're just wondering what the best way to do it would be once it is feasible again.
Well, I think the first thing is to have the assets available so that venues know that they're okay with booking you, because it's a huge risk on their part to book you for a night, because you have to bring in money for them. So they have to know that you are a reputable artist who can make money and who can bring in bodies into their venue. So I think the first thing is being able to show what you're worth. So, but for them to even look at you in the first place. I don't know if you guys want to build on that.
I don't know. I thought the question was more asking like, how do you know what venues are out there? What I've done in the past is to answer that question. Is actually sometimes I'll look at other artists in my genre and where they've gone, where they've played, and see if I can kind of mimic some of their tours and the common venues after. So, but then you have to do a little bit more research in also finding if those venues are still have survived this after everything, and then and if they're having live music and how they're solving the safety issue and stuff. So it's going to take a bit more work and research in that aspect.
Okay, and now there's an artist who would kind of like to know a bit more about branding. How do you find the perfect image for when you enjoy and write many different styles? Or even with one style, what do you think is the best way to kind of narrow down your own image?
I think you have to really know what's important to you and where you are in your life and your career. And it's not something that comes easy. There's a reason why people struggle with it, and there's a reason why labels spend billions of dollars on branding and imaging. It's not an easy thing to do. You really have to look at, you know, your demographics. Who's your audience? Who are the people that would buy your music or listen to your music? Who are you? What message do you want to get out? Do you support certain ideals? Do you, you know, do you fall into a sort of a clique or a group, or and then base your ideas off of that? Literally write everything down on a piece of paper and try to draw some conclusions, and then pick stuff that sort of ask friends who have marketing backgrounds or something. Just try to pick something that an image that suits you.
I think building on that as well, like you have to brand who you are as a person, not the music that you make, right? Like as a country artist, you can wear the hat and the boots and whatever, but if it doesn't mean anything to you, like you can be the stereotype, but I don't think that serves you any purpose. The real way to create a brand and an image that resonates with people is if you are your true self. So I think whatever that looks like, and the artists that have stood the test of time have been their full and complete selves. They may have embellished it, but they embrace exactly who they are, and that's where the tenacity comes from, right? That's the it factor, is being yourself and having that be the draw, right? So I don't think you brand, and I think like having multiple music styles is part of your brand, your versatility. Like build that into there, but your brand, like it's not defined by the genre that you play, it's defined by who you are, and you make it what you want it to be.
And it's okay if it changes too, right? It's okay if you start off like I started in punk rock and I was a drummer with long ass hair, and that was who I was, and I'm not that anymore. You can change your brand to suit you as you go through life and figure out who you really are.
Awesome. So I guess we'll see. We'll listen to another song from one of you guys. I guess we'll go with Tori and Tori Hathaway. Or sorry.
What's going on? Okay.
Stop. Okay, sorry, Tori. Take it away.
This is a song. It's not the newest song, but I like it, and some of the artists requested that I play it, so I am. How you doing? Wow, it's really nice to see you again. Yes, I've been busy teaching all my broken pieces how to mend. All alone, had I known that you'd be here, I swear I would have gone straight home. I would have gone home. You look happy. I really hope you found someone who treats you well. And have you missed me? And if you did, somehow it's really hard to tell. Yet you can see straight through me. There's no fairy tale that I could try to sell. There's nothing here to sell. So please forgive me for the tears I shed, to the loss of love and the loss of a friend. It was easy to let you in, and now you stand here in front of me like nothing ever happened. It's the end of an era, the end of an era. I believe you, so let's not make this any harder than it is. We don't need feelings, and if we did, well, I've got nothing left to give. You took it all and let me fall to the cold hard ground my world caving in. I gave you everything. So please forgive me for the tears I shed as I look into your eyes and I lose you all again. It was easy to let you back in when you said that I should trust you, and I said I could pretend. Now it's the end of an era, the end of an era. So I'm gonna leave soon before I give to you the last bit of my pride. But it doesn't matter, 'cause it's already yours. I can say I tried. Before I go back to my home, I'll say I hope you never feel this way inside. And then we'll say goodbye to the end of an era, the end of an era.
Gorgeous song, End of an Era by Tori Hathaway. Lovely. Should have
I
been
always love
playing that in March when COVID broke out, because we all felt that. And we have Owen Lee joining us in the
Hello.
panel now. Excellent to have you here. So we're going to keep going with the questions here, and we were talking about genres a little bit before Tori played her song. Now, do you guys tend to stick with your set genre that you've kind of been playing for the most part, or do you kind of play and write whatever is artistically feeding you at the moment, or do you let that kind of transition into your genre? How do you guys go about your genres?
I like taking inspiration from multiple genres and using that to really fuel everything that I write. I think in order for you to really encapsulate like a real truly great song, I think you have to at least pull perspective or inspiration from different genres.
Totally. I totally agree. I'm the same way. I love I'm in different moods every day, and that's same as every person on this earth. And I think you just kind of have to draw as an artist. You draw from those different moods and then experiences, and sometimes different genres kind of suit those experiences and moods better. So I think they just go hand in hand when you're songwriting, and just kind of, I don't know, everything is different when I write. So, but I guess it all kind of just gets classified as country.
I totally agree. I noticed that the genre that gets pulled into a song is partially in how I write it. So if I write a song with my guitar, it tends to pull from like the country indie singer songwriter kind of vibes. But if I'm top line writing or working with a producer, it gets very pop very quickly. Versus writing on the piano, I tend to pull like a lot of jazzy, bluesy things out. So I think that's also like a huge factor as well in terms of what genres come into play, is the style of writing that you're using and what you tend to like lean towards while you're writing.
I absolutely play to my strength as far as genres are concerned. I mean, we all have music that we grew up on and are the most natural to us. But as we grow up and we network and we meet different people, we're exposed to different styles. You know, I went to school for music and was heavily exposed to jazz and classical. And though these aren't things that I grew up on, I incorporate them into what I do. So I don't like putting limits as far as, you know, you grew up neo soul, so that's what you sing. you grew up in the church, so you sing gospel. But I absolutely think it's cool to borrow from different sources as you go, and basically find different ways to refine your style. So it's R&B with a tinge of something else. You know, I kind of like that marriage of different styles and genres.
So once you find your kind of niche or genre, how do you go about finding your audience? How do you target your audience once you know what exactly kind of genre you're going to be doing?
Who wants to take this one?
I think you know the
Oh no.
Did Owen freeze? Okay, Owen's frozen for me.
Same.
Kelsey, I heard Kelsey speaking, so I stopped.
Oh, you can hear you, Owen. So
Okay, go ahead, Owen.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, all right, awesome. What I was saying is, I like the saying, you know, if you build it, they will come. You know, I find if you try to attack a specific demographic, you'll find yourself getting frustrated because it's almost like you have to stray from what is true to you in order to please people or in order to impress people. I'm more played to the school of thought of, here's what I have, here's my product, here's my music. Listen, if you love it, awesome. If you don't, at least try to. You know, I would prefer to remain true to myself, and I feel like if you are passionate about what you do, your audience will find you rather than you going out trying to convince people to like you. Just be yourself and the people will come.
That's good advice. I recently I was part of a music seminar, and it was chart metric. I don't know if the listeners know this. Chart metric is basically a one-page database. They have like every artist on there, and they're all ranked according to their social following, their streams and sales, and every kind of data possible is listed in this chart metric. And they were actually saying how the biggest artists in the world were not necessarily big in their hometown first. They were big everywhere else in the world first, and then they started focusing on their hometown, their home country, their home province or state or whatever. And they said what is really difficult, I found really, really interesting, was what's really difficult for artists that are big, really big and popular in their hometown and home country is for them to break out after that, and which is I thought was backwards, but that's what they said according to their analytics. So I guess that's something to keep in mind and focus on too. So don't think so narrow-mindedly within your own circle. Think big, think worldwide.
I know another thing that you can do as well, at least that I'm familiar with other people doing, is like doing what you do and doing it best, and then finding other people who do similar things and seeing what their demographic is, and then seeing if what you're doing resonates with that. But there's also there's a bunch of factors. So a while ago in my career, obviously I was targeting like young teenagers, like young girls mostly with my music. And that was partially because of my age. So there are those factors as well. It really like Owen said, it depends on who resonates with your music, but there are a variety of facets you can go through to get to that conclusion. It just doesn't have to be like putting things out into the world and seeing who like grabs onto it and finds you. It can be like finding those people through means of like trying things in front of a bunch of different demographics and seeing what sticks, or finding like-minded people. Like I'm even familiar with artists like doing shows with other artists who have completely different demographics and seeing if that resonates, right? Like using different things, and I guess just trying everything and seeing what sticks.
So we're going to keep with the emerging artist questions, and then we'll probably play another song soon and then get to the public questions, which are probably a little more lighthearted, easygoing. But for this next one, everyone has a different path in reaching their goals in the music industry. How do you guys know when you're on the right path?
Do you ever even really know if you're on the right path as an artist? I mean, hey, maybe you have a different experience, but I think being an artist goes hand in hand with having self-doubt and moments of, am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right genre? Am I, singing the right music? Does this song suit me? I think there's 1,000 questions that you're always asking yourself as an artist. And if you weren't, then you wouldn't be working hard to achieve what you want to, right? So I think it's a good thing if you're asking those questions. But yeah, I mean, how do you know if you're really on the right path? If things start working out for you and you're booking the shows that you wanted to book, you're meeting the people that you wanted to meet, and you're taking advantage of opportunities that are being, presented to you, I think that's a pretty good sign that, at least the path is clear and should continue to proceed down it, kind of thing.
I think it's a lot more obvious when you're on the wrong path, because then you have people coming in and saying, dude, you're on the wrong path. What's going on here? And that's a lot easier to see. So I think a good idea is if you don't have people coming up and saying, like, what is going on right now? Who even are you? And what are you doing? Like, if that's not happening, then you're probably doing something right.
But then there's also.
But if people are coming.
Yeah, like there's always going to be people that are going to be polite, and your friends and family are hopefully always encouraging no matter what you do. So for me, it was a telltale sign was when I would get the strangers that had no relation to me come up and say, you should pursue this as a career. There's something here. And then that's when I really started to take it seriously, more than just a hobby. That was a turning point for me. And then what keeps me focused, and I always set goals for myself. I always say, in every year, I always reevaluate. So, and then you have to have like the bigger goals, like every 5 years or so on. And see if you've reached those goals. And I know a big one for me is if as every year passes, if I don't feel like I've done better than the last year and progressed, then I might start to reconsider things. But so far, it's just been uphill, knock on wood. So that's why I'm still here.
And I would also like to suggest, I think it's important as artists to have honest conversations with ourselves, looking in the mirror and saying, what am I doing in my life? Do I even like the music that I'm producing? When I write and release a new song, am I seeking validation from others to decide if it's good or not? Or do I love it right out the gate? Do I leave the studio going, man, that was the one? You really have to have that honest conversation with yourself, because you also do not want to fall into the trap of believing things are good just because other people tell you it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to pay attention to that feeling inside. When you release a song, when you are creating, how does it feel? Does it feel organic? Does it feel genuine? Does it feel forced? Do you feel can't find a vibe, but maybe if someone else says it's good, then I think it's good. You just got to be honest with yourself.
So a lot of people get into music and maybe think all they got to do is play music and just show up and do the gigs and the songs and stuff like that. But there's often a lot of other skills you need to have in being a live musician. What would you guys say is the second most important skill to have besides being good at music?
Work ethic.
Ooh. Yup.
Boom, right there. Elaborate, Tori.
It's a lot more than being like good at music, because like it's not like you wake up one morning and then like this gift has been given to you that, and then like all of a sudden you're like the next big star. You can have all of the talent in the world, but if you don't have the drive to take the necessary steps and wake up to get on the road at 4 a.m. and like do your vocal exercises every day and go to the gym and practice your instrument for 2 hours a day and write the songs and have the tough conversations and save the money. Like, if you don't have the ability to harness all of the necessary things and keep propelling forward with that, like, nothing's going to happen. You can have all of the talent in the world, but if you don't have the ability or the drive to do anything with it, it doesn't really matter, does it?
I've seen some of the best musicians in the world in garages with, 70-year-old guys drinking Carling in the middle of the night because that's the only place that they could get, because they didn't have the drive to, put down the bottle or, do something productive and really work every single day. If you are like knee deep in music and you are busting your butt and you ask yourself, can I do this for the next 20 years? And your answer is, I don't know. Then either you need to reevaluate or maybe you're a garage band dude.
Yeah, I think it's like being an athlete, and there's the top athletes in the world train every day. And I don't know if anyone saw the Michael Jordan Last Dance, but he worked harder than everyone else, every single practice, every single game. And there's always going to be, and especially in our industry, it's so competitive. There's so many talented people. So it really comes down to the work ethic, I think. And, there's going to be, you just have to work harder. That's the bottom line. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely work ethic is the thing. And just to echo that, I think consistency is also important as well. Because, like knowing that we're not looking for instant or immediate gratification. Like what we're doing is for the long run. We're trying to be in this thing for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. So, you may have put in an all-nighter tomorrow, and that's great. But just know that you kind of have to keep that up, because there's a lot of things that will happen for you because of work you might have done 5 years ago. Not everything is always instantaneous. So as you're working hard, you also have to remain consistent.
And also, I think a big role is you have to genuinely be a nice person at the same time. Like, you're like every second, of you never know. You never want to say anything bad. You never, like, those. Every single second is a chance for a connection, and just be a nice person, and doors are more likely to open for you that way.
Kelsey is literally the spokesperson for that, because I have literally never met a person in my whole life or my career or anywhere that literally puts her money where her mouth is when she says that, be a nice person. She will go out of her way and break her own back if it means helping you in any way. And I think honestly, like she's got a great system, because I don't know a single person in the country music community that doesn't know her for being nice and want to help her because of how she helps other people.
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
agree wholeheartedly.
Oh,
Like,
geez,
isn't it just
thanks,
the worst
That's awesome.
when you have like isn't it just the worst when you have a musical hero or someone you look up to and you finally meet them and they're just not nice? There's just that kind of changes your perception of them pretty quick.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
All-
in this musical day and age, musicians and everybody has tools for marketing and getting themselves out there way more than we ever have, like in the 70s, 80s, 90s. What would be some kind of strategies you guys use with the social media tools for getting your name and music out there?
Repetition is the essence of learning. Just keep putting stuff out. Just like, but make sure that it's quality content, but done is better than, or perfect. Done is better than perfect. I think that's how the saying goes. So get stuff out there and work hard at making sure that you stay in people's minds.
I think the biggest thing that I have to say about that is, like you mentioned, quality is the key. But often I end up hearing about people who are so invested in making the quality enough that they never end up actually putting anything on their social media. So it's really the balance of, like, how high quality does it really need to be for an Instagram post, right? Like, it's not like it's an album cover, it's an Instagram post. And if you can have a quality that represents your brand in a meaningful way, it doesn't have to be the world's best camera. It shouldn't be the world's worst camera. Like, you should not be like shooting Instagram photos on a Fisher Price camera unless that is literally what you do.
If that's your brand, then go for it.
And absolutely. But otherwise, no. Like, but if I personally would rather see a decent quality post on a normal phone camera every single day than I would to hear or see like something that was the world's best quality literally once every year.
Mm-hmm. Done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
I know from the research that I've done and podcasts and stuff that I've listened to, I listen to like social media marketing podcasts on my spare time. But from those, I've learned that like they just reiterated that videos get a lot more views than just pictures. So now things are starting. So if you can put more videos out there, then that's also a better strategy. There was something else I wanted to say, but I forgot it. We'll come back.
I have one other thing as well, is stay on top of the thing that's working best. Like, TikTok is such a massive thing right now. Like, the organic like reach you can get through this platform is insane. Like, so you can maximize on those opportunities rather than like doing a Facebook video and spending $30 on it so you can get a couple thousand people to look at your post. Use the platforms that are available and easily accessible to you that actually have meaningful reach.
That was another thing, was also just focusing on, like, it's so hard. There's so many platforms, right? And so I would, from my suggestion, would just be focus on your top 3, maybe 4 platforms and really go hard at those. And yeah, just it's better than just having every single platform and then having like small numbers on each of those ones.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I think we'll take another musical break. This time, I guess we'll have Kelsey Main play us a song.
Sure. This one is called Between Us. And I always like to do a little twist on words. So this is an example of that. Can't put my finger on it. A little something's going down here. Oh yeah. And if I'm being honest, then I've been thinking on this since my second beer. Oh, the more I drink about it, the more it's getting clear. You're leaning in, asking if I want to stay. I'm saying, baby, there's too much in the way. Let's go different vibe. Come on, I think we just made up our minds. You're leaning in, asking if I want to stay. I'm saying, baby, there's too much in the way. Let's go to stab, grab a cab for a drink at my place. Where we don't have to hurry, we got nothing but time. Peel back the layers and see what we find. Let's take a sip of something, turn it into nothing between us. Woo! You're leaning in, asking if I want to stay. I'm saying, baby, there's too much in the way. Let's go to town, grab a cab for a drink at my place. Yeah, we don't have to hurry, we got nothing but time. Peel back the layers and see what we find. Let's take this little something, turn it into nothing between us.
Woo!
Woo!
That's a fun one.
Awesome.
Kelsey, I just wrote a song
Yeah,
between.
really groovy.
I don't know if it's because I saw it on your album or not. I can't figure it out, but I'm just gonna throw mine out because yours is better.
Well, actually, I have a plan on turning that into a duet. So call me. There you go.
Yes. I will do that with you. Yeah.
Sweet.
Well, with tracks like that, I don't know how you answer the next question, but this one's regarding facing rejection and like, you know, bad comments and stuff like that. I don't see it happening with you four. I don't see it happening much, but maybe you guys have something to say about that. Maybe in your early years or something.
Rejection.
I
can't. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so here's my thing. And it wasn't my thing in the first place, but I've kind of embraced it, which is when I'm working, I'm in the ring. Like I'm doing the work, I'm fighting my battles, I'm making it happen. And if you're not in the ring as well, then I don't care for your opinion and it means nothing to me. If you're somebody standing in the crowd who doesn't actually know what it means to put in the work and get your hands a little dirty, then I don't care about what you have to say.
Wow. Just gonna.
It's not my thing. It's by Brene Brown, who is basically my hero. Like it's her thing, and I've run with it, and I've like totally like taken on this thing, and it's changed my life. I love it so much.
That's awesome. I think from my perspective, yes, you're always going to find some sort of resistance or hesitation. I try to look at everything, even if it's like downright mean criticism. I try to take it and be like, okay, well, why is this person so compelled to be so upset about that song or this music or me as a person? What am I? What could I change, or how could I turn that around? And how can I make a fan out of this person by being like, can I please pick your brain about what it is that's driving you crazy, right?
Yeah, I think it's just keeping an open mind about things. I'm naturally I've always been a people pleaser. Like I just like want to make sure I do everything in my power to have someone like me. Like I hate that feeling of rejection, but I know in this industry it happens. And you just gotta develop that little thick skin if you don't have it already. And you also have to accept that you're never gonna please everyone. There's always everyone always has different tastes. So you have to look at it that way. And but at the same time, like I'm like you, Rob, like I want to know what I can do to help the situation. And you know, and then sometimes you can use that as motivation to get better. So that's just how I've dealt with it. But sometimes it's hard.
I think it really
What's that
depends
like
on
on your end, Owen? Sorry, Tori.
I kind of no, that's all right. I kind of echo what Kelsey says as far as you can't please everybody, and this is outside of music. Just generally in life, people, not everybody's gonna vibe with you, you know. And sometimes it may be valid reasons, and sometimes it may be completely irrelevant, you know. And you'll find a lot when you start releasing music. You'll release a song, and someone might leave a comment that has nothing to do with the song, right? Like they're gonna say something about, I don't know, maybe a shirt you're wearing, or just irrelevant opinions. So just echoing what Rob said, like just looking at everything everyone says, but being able to take it with a grain of salt and kind of having an understanding of who you are outside of people's opinions, so that when the opinions do flood in, you already have sense of self and you can validate everything coming at you, like, oh, that's just nonsense, or maybe there's some truth to that, or maybe I could get constructive criticism out of that, right? It's hard and it's not easy because I liked, right? And I don't ever like being on anyone's bad side.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, everybody has their own opinions, right? So you just have to learn how to take it all with a grain of salt.
it really depends on who the feedback is coming from.
Yeah.
So I should have asked this question after you guys touched on playing a duet together or something, but do you guys prefer writing your songs by yourselves, or do you prefer co-writing, or even just collaborating with other musicians, or do you like to kind of keep it contained until you have the song done and then you show the rest of your bandmates or whatever?
Rob.
I'll go for okay. I personally have I've co-written very, very few songs, like so few, it's insane. But I've been watching Songland, which is an awesome show. If you love learning about songwriting and that kind of thing, the process, it's incredible. This show really teaches everybody like a lot of things. And I heard Usher say the other day that collaboration is key in order to pull these different inspirations and really create like something magical. And I'm now leaning more toward doing more co-writes, and I think that there is something to be said from external inspiration and, you know, pooling ideas to create and make sure the song is going on the perfect path that it should be.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for collaborating. I just always, I think it's 2 brains or 3 brains are better than 1. And yeah, and then it's everyone. So and when you do collaborate with other people, what I've learned and what I've felt like is with every person that you collaborate with, it's you learn a new tool from them, and it's like you just add it to your toolkit, and you just, that helps you to become a better writer faster, I feel like. I don't know, that's my experience anyways.
I love
Totally.
co-writing. I find that when I write songs by myself, they all sound identical, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
And also, I find, so what I've learned works really well for me, and it's different for everybody. That's the important thing to know. What works really well for me is if I start with an idea that comes from an honest emotional place, and I bring that into the co-write, I'm able to develop it in a way that it still has that, like, the feeling, and I'm able to bring that to the table, but I can also distance myself from it a little bit enough that I can be critical of what I'm writing. Then I can make the edits that make it actually a better song versus the things that I want to say. Like, if I want, like, I'm pulling from a very specific detail, but if I can make it a little bit more generic, then it'll resonate a lot better. Things like that. Or even like changing things for the cadence. If I'm really invested in the emotion and the story I'm telling, then I'm not as cognizant of like the emphasis that you're placing on specific syllables and things like that. So being able to detach yourself from a little bit and get that second pair of ears saying, okay, but did you think about the cadence, like where this is sitting? Does that work actually, or is it just what you want? Right? Having that sounding board is really helpful for me.
So once you have all your music done, everything's recorded, do you have a strategy for putting it out? Now that it seems to be there's less money in selling recorded music and more money in playing live, but we can't play live very well right now. Do you guys think there should be kind of a change in how musicians sell their product, like be it merch, their CDs, vinyl, whatever? Do you think it should sort of stay in the same ballpark of pricing, or do you think it should be upped a little bit? Do you think streaming services should up their prices? What do you guys think of that?
I think we can all agree that streaming services should be paying their artists a lot more. I also don't think that we should be, upping the prices. However, with everything going on, people are willing to pay a lot more to see music right now. There's a market to be had there.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the biggest question is how much can we actually change, right? That there is a standard in place, whether it, like, if you're buying music, it's 99 cents or $1.29 per single, or if you're streaming it, you can pretty much get the same rate wherever you go. So the question is, are we going to jump on that bandwagon and have our music easily accessible to everybody with the click of a button and benefit off of that, or are we going to go our own way and take the risk of having people not invest in the work that we've created simply because it's not easily accessible, right? It's the balance there, and potentially, I guess what it is for me is adding value, right? So I have this thing that I'm doing, how can I add value? So before, for me, it was, and I know this is like a super common typical thing, but I really wanted to sell physical albums because I had them made and that counted for something, for physical sales, right? You can count that in your sales and in terms of how a song is tracking. And so people always wanted it on iTunes, but I sold a t-shirt for the same cost as a t-shirt and a CD. So you could just get a t-shirt on its own, or you could get a t-shirt and a CD. And for the t-shirt cost, I accounted for both anyways, right? So you get the added value, I get the sale of my album, and you get an extra thing to take home. So, like, kind of coming up with added value for ways to actually build that.
You're so smart.
That's why you're all here.
That's why I think the OMCI has been the most valuable resource that I've ever been a part of or had in my life. And I wish I had discovered it sooner, or I don't know. I don't even know if it existed sooner, but I wish it was in my life sooner. That's all it was.
Do you guys think that like record labels and stuff like that are still as needed these days, or do you think there should be a shift of what they do, or do you think they're irrelevant at all really these days? What do you guys think of record labels?
That's complicated.
I think they're still relevant in terms of you need to be able to have the right people to help market, the right people to help set you up, the right people to push it to radio. They're a collective team that can help you with your career sort of explode. But at the same time, they're not needed. We're all doing it ourselves. Like I don't know if anybody's here affiliated with a label, but I mean, you can do it yourself. It just takes all the work on your end, or if you have a team, then you're okay. But that sort of removes the need for a record label. But they're still helpful, but they're going to take a whole hell of a lot of your money. So I don't know.
Well, I think it's really the toss up of what you get versus what you give. For some people, record labels are a huge asset, but that's when you're already making enough money that all that they have to do is literally start dipping into your pocket, right? That's the only time when having a label is an asset to you, when you don't need them anymore, right? When which is so ironic. They were incredibly important a decade ago, or even like or two, like even a decade ago is not enough. But when social media wasn't a thing and you didn't have access to radio and promotion and like all of these things, they were essential. But at this point, they're a glorified bank loan that takes your intellectual property. Like, that's really what sums it up. So the question is, how much are you willing to give up to be signed to a label? And is it like they're relevant for the people who don't need them anymore because they make them a lot more extra money and it's a lot less work, right? I think what we're going to see is that over time, now that independent artists have access to all of these resources and a platform to connect with people, record labels are going to become significantly more irrelevant, and they're either going to recognize that and adapt to it to support independent artists, or they're not. And it's going to be the same thing that happened when streaming services came online and they were like, oh, this literally doesn't matter, we're just going to ignore it. And then it changed the music industry. I think there's two ways it's going to go. It's either they're going to say, we've made this mistake before and we're not going to do it again, and we're going to pivot, or they're going to keep doing what they're doing and pretend that this isn't happening, and it's going to run them into the ground. And whether this happens in a decade or 5 decades, it's going to happen, because record labels don't have value anymore other than a name. They're a name, and they're a massive check with like huge, like the interest, 12 cents on the dollar on $1 million takes a long time to pay back.
Yeah. And I was talking to a very successful Canadian band frontman about a year ago, and I said, how are things with the label? And he goes, well, if you're talking about wanting a label, do you want to be well off or do you want to be famous? And I was like, well, that's a very loaded question. He goes, okay, if you want to be famous, go with the label. But he's like, if you want to be well off, I wouldn't even go near one. I was like, okay, there we go.
So kind of like landing a label back in the day, getting on the radio was kind of like the big ticket. Do you guys still see getting on local radio stations really important? And what kind of stations do you send your music to? Do you kind of send it to the lesser known college stations? Do you send it to the big ones? Do you send it to everyone, or just send it to radio stations at all?
Well, Mr. Radio guy in the room can answer it here. Someone might be a little biased.
Yeah, definitely biased, but I'm also not, because the radio station that I work for will not support my music. So anyway, I'm just gonna go ahead here and say that radio is very important, because radio can get you and your music in front of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, and it gets you well known enough across, if you're successful enough, across the nation. And Canadian country radio, with 85 stations across Canada, if you get a medium rotation song with most of those stations, you can plan a tour across Canada and you'll pretty much be able to book shows.
Yeah.
Right across.
That being said, though, it depends on your demographic, though, because if your demographic doesn't listen to the radio, then it's kind of irrelevant.
Correct. Yes. So I am biased then. Yeah.
Yeah. With country music, a large, I say majority of the fans still listen to radio. I think it's one of the few genres where they still listen to the radio and they still buy physical CDs. So, I think, and unfortunately, my experience, and it might also be the whole female being in country music on the radio too. You know, it's been more out in the news now that radio does tend to play more men than women in country music on the radio. So with my experience, it's a pretty saturated with the labels. The label artists are the ones in the top 20, and like you won't see a single independent artist in the top 20, not even
Top 50.
Yeah, top 50. It's if you break top 50 as an independent artist, that is big.
1 in a million.
So yeah, I think the highest I've gotten is 75.
And that's pretty good.
Which is pretty good. Yeah. So it's been a little bit of a struggle in the radio department, to be honest, being an independent artist. So that's my take on it.
So
Just to touch on that, sorry, Braden. Radio is not friendly to independent artists. If you really want to be successful and get radio play, you almost have to be affiliated with a label, or program directors won't look at you as a serious entity, and they'll be like, oh, you know, he doesn't have professional representation, he must not be good enough. But that's just because most of them don't do their homework, and it frustrates the hell out of me. So that's why I'm like fired up about this, right? But yeah. So that's why people like Kelsey, who have amazing music, and other women in Canadian country music who might not be, you know, attached to a label, but they have killer stuff, that the program directors aren't even giving them an opportunity to be heard, which is insane.
So do you guys still see it worth, like, for emerging artists who definitely can't get on any of these radio stations, do you still think it's worth sending to like college radio stations, or like lesser known, smaller ones, even just to get those random plays out there?
It doesn't hurt as long as it's not costing you a whole bunch of money.
Mm-hmm.
Places like Great Lakes Country, well, again, speaking in the country genre, sorry, I just have a very vast knowledge of this. Places like Great Lakes Country in Manitoulin, and even like the Bayshore Broadcasting country stations, they own 5 of them. If you get on the Fresh Picks, it's like 112 radio spins in 2 weeks across 5 of their stations. It's insane. So that helps. It's a good paycheck. And then, yeah, the Great Lakes Country, they support independent Canadian artists like you wouldn't believe. And yeah, college radio stations are a great place to start, because those are people like you and I that are sitting in a room saying, let's give the underdog a chance, because they're underdogs themselves.
And then it also gives you a number and a statistic. Like if you can say that college radio, all these stations are playing my song, it gives you more of a platform to use that to your advantage, and to negotiate, and to basically market yourself to the other stations so that they can hedge you as well.
But I think in addition to radio, you have to make sure you widen your scope, like thinking about like Spotify curated playlists. And if you can get on a podcast or something like that, like a high volume podcast that caters to your demographic, like it's so much wider than radio. You can still tap into things that have the same purpose as radio without the same name as radio. Like it's so much bigger than that. So even though that's an important factor, you have to widen your scope as well.
Good. Yeah.
So now that so many things are self-done with artists, they're trying to do everything. At-home production is a huge thing, and that a lot of emerging artists still don't know maybe if it's worth investing in all of like home studio gear and doing it yourself, or still spending that money on an actual studio and producer and engineers. Do you guys think that that's like the trend for artists to start doing their own recordings at home instead of going to studios?
Are you good at it?
Well, is it worth getting good at it, I guess I should say?
Is
yes, the answer. I'm just saying the answer is yes. Especially if like we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, right? So artists who say may have been used to booking studio time and getting ideas out, they're the ones who are feeling it the most. And the ones who are at home with studio equipment, who may not be able to get to a studio space, still have the capability of setting their own stuff up and tracking ideas and kind of keeping the momentum going. I'm going to kind of use myself as an example. Jordan Sparks won American Idol a couple years back, I think the 6th season. She just released her first single in the last 5 years called Unknown. And I'm singing the background vocals on that single. I recorded it right here where I'm talking to you from. And it was in the middle of this pandemic, right? That was about a month ago. My friend called me because they were working on the song in LA and weren't able to have access to a choir. So they called me to do the choir vocals. I was capable of doing that because I have the equipment at home to do it. When you possess the equipment, it gives you the power to be more of an asset in this industry, opposed to being a liability. And I don't say that to be offensive to anybody. I'm not trying to be, but even if you're not good at it at first, it's worth it to have it and to learn and to get better, because nobody starts off being a stellar engineer or a stellar mixer or anything like that. But being able to play around and kind of master your craft may do you much more good in the long run than kind of waiting around to be able to book studio sessions and allow other people to handle all the work for you. But I'm kind of like a hands-on guy, so I guess just from my perspective, that's how I feel about it.
As long as you're willing to actually get good at it, though, like not the guy who's gonna go drop like 10 grand on like the nicest mixing board and speakers and all the plugins in the world and then use it twice. Like as long as you're willing to actually commit to the craft.
Right.
I agree though, Owen. It's like every single time, it's way better to be an asset than to be a liability. That is 100% true. However, you can build yourself to be better and to put yourself into a better situation. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it was done before all this pandemic things happened, that artists are working just like Owen did, like virtually, like someone will send someone a track, do it wherever they can. Do you see that becoming more of a trend as well? Do you think that's going to happen a lot more, or even have jams with bandmates through apps like this? Like, do you think that's going to happen a lot more, even when there won't be a need for it? It'll just be kind of there for us.
I think we're kind of in the thick of it, really. I mean, it also depends a lot on, I guess, the genre you do, because certain genres are easier to do that than others. If you're a hip hop or R&B artist, then majority of your music is, MIDI and you're able to kind of do it yourself from your keyboard at home, then yeah, you'll probably be able to bang out in like albums after albums from the comfort of your home. But say you release music that requires live band, or gospel music or country music, or different things, you may need that in person, in the same vicinity for the vibe of what you're trying to do. But I definitely think we're in the thick of artists recording and doing things for themselves and kind of taking money and power away from labels and studio spaces, and kind of keeping more of it in-house. I think we're kind of in the thick of it now.
So do you guys maybe you, Owen, would know what the best kind of starting gear or software that a musician would want to get first if they were to want to start recording at home instead of going out to studio? Maybe like what the basic ground level gear would be?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on what type of musician you are. I'm a singer, right? So what I did is I bought myself a microphone, an interface, and invested in a digital audio workstation. Before I had the money to invest, I used Reaper. It's a free one that you could just download online and go. But when I got a little bit more coin, I got Logic Pro. Most people will want to go with Pro Tools. Some may say Cubase. But if you can just save up some money and get yourself that interface, that mic, that digital audio workstation to work off of a computer, that is kind of like the bare minimum to get going. Once you want to start getting more creative, you might invest in a keyboard. You might invest in, more equipment that you could use to kind of enhance your production. But for the initial start, if you're working with instrumental tracks, get yourself a mic and an interface, and away you go. But that's from a vocalist standpoint. Completely different musician.
I would also say, like, in terms of getting the mic, make sure that you do your research and get the best mic for the job. So you would probably want a mic that focuses, like, really, like, does the job for vocals. But I would look more for a mic that I can also stick in front of an acoustic guitar or something. Like, I would look for a more versatile mic. So also, like, for all of this stuff, make sure you do your research to get exactly what you need, no more, no less.
All right. So we are running a little bit low on questions now. Most are coming from public, kind of goofy questions. Maybe we can, if somebody wants to play one more song, and then we can get to the public questions, or we can just jump right to that.
Oh, I think Owen said he'd be down to play something.
Yeah?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Why not? I actually plugged my keyboard in just in case. I'll play a song I wrote a little while ago. It's called Think of Me. When injustice fills your heart with pain, when you pray at night for peace, yeah, when you feel like all your hopes in vain, just stop and think of me. Yeah. If you find yourself against the odds, yeah, no amount of time can heal. You're fighting battles you've already lost. Just stop and think of me. I'm the voice of the people. Through the struggles we fight, I'm the face of redemption. The truth between the lies when you look into the darkest night. Oh, and all you see is out of reach. Oh, don't you lose your focus in the blind. Or just stop and think of me. Yeah. See, I've been battered, beaten, bruised, and torn, but I still made it in one piece. And there were times I felt all alone, but thank the Lord, 'cause I know He kept me. Oh, so if you cry, let it be tears of joy. Yeah, find the strength that lies so deep. Yeah, and as you rebuild hope that's been destroyed, just stop and think of me. 'Cause I'm the voice of the people. Through the struggles we fight, I'm the face of redemption. The truth between the lies when you look into the darkest night. And all you see is out of reach. Oh, don't you lose your focus in the blind. Yeah, just stop and think of me. Oh, when you look into the darkest night, and all you see is out of reach. Oh, don't you lose your focus in the blind. just stop and think of me. Oh, just stop and think of me. Just stop and think of me. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Teach me your
Chills,
ways.
man.
Voice. Oh,
Amazing. Okay.
More soul
Wow.
than a shoe store.
So, moving on. I don't know what question you ask after an awesome song like that. Well, let's just go with some lighter-hearted public questions that we've been getting. There's been a few more that came in while Owen was playing. So, what are some of your favorite festivals or shows or memories you have of being a musician? Maybe we'll start with Kelsey.
Whew, my favorite. Each show is just so incredible for different reasons. What is that? Sorry. So I guess like Boots and Hearts obviously is like insane. As Rob can tell you. I got to play. We got to play main stage the same year in 2018.
Well, no, sorry, you were Saturday, I was Sunday.
Yeah, the same year.
Yeah,
2018.
same year, totally.
Yeah. And so that's incredible. Havelock Jamboree is so cool. Havelock and Big Valley Jamboree in Alberta, those are really cool as well because they're just older. Like they're at least 30 years. So you get the generations that are partying together, and like you get their grandparents that are having beers with their grandkids of age, obviously. But it's just so cool to see that tradition and see those people that come every year for that. And then there's like shows like Grand Bend on like the outdoor stage where I think that was like our biggest audience ever. It was just like people as far as the eye can see. So stuff like that. I don't know. It's just they're all incredible for different reasons.
what about you, Rob?
Again, yeah, obviously Boots and Hearts is, like no other. That's a massive stage. I've been really fortunate to have played a lot of very strange venues. Like I've played on a barge in the middle of Georgian Bay, and there were like hundreds of boats parked around us. That is really cool. This year we're still doing it because it's still considered social distancing. But I'm being flown in on a helicopter, and I'm jumping out of the helicopter into the water, jumping on the bar. Yeah, so like stuff like that is memorable beyond belief. Like it's insane. They're like, "Oh, we'll drop you off on the barge." I'm like, "No, I'm jumping." Like it's stuff like that like I'll never forget stuff like that. And there's yeah, like I've opened for Aaron Pritchett, who puts on a heck of a show at the Grace Hartman Amphitheater in Sudbury, and that was a party and a half. There's just been so many amazing opportunities that I've been able to be a part of, and I think every show has its own little piece of magic.
What about you, Owen?
Man, I just genuinely love to be on stage. Period. So to find one is so tricky. I mean, I've had monumental moments. You know, I've sung backgrounds from Mariah Carey years ago. I've recently, probably last year, I sung at this church called Elevation Church in North Carolina, and it's a church that broadcasts to millions around the world. So even to be on the stage in that moment was like, whoa, that's crazy. But I think two memorable ones for me would, I actually did a show last week for Canada Day coming. It's a virtual concert where they're going to be broadcasting throughout Nova Scotia. We stood in the middle of the Scotiabank Stadium in Halifax, completely empty, and it was just us on stage with a huge camera crew and drones and going around us while we're, performing as if we're performing to a full stadium, but it's to honor the social distancing. It's to, be cautious of the timing, but to still give people that stadium concert feel. So I think as of recent, even though it hasn't been aired yet, we filmed it last week, and I think that'll be one of my favorite moments when it does come.
Wow.
Cool. And Tori?
For me, I like the big shows are really cool, but I think my favorite ones are the really small, intimate ones. I thrive on the connection and like seeing that person and like really resonating with them and being on the same vibe. That's like the feel good for me. So a couple of my most memorable things. One definitely comes to mind. I got to play the Bluebird for the first time on my 15th birthday.
That's unreal.
And just like the history in that room and like playing on like original songs in a play, like it was, I can't describe the magic that was there. Like it wasn't a normal place. Like the history on the walls and the feeling of like just it was like electric. So that was definitely one for me. And then I have like it's kind of silly, but I remember I was playing a show out in the middle of like it was up near Ottawa. Not really near where I'd been before, and it was just like a normal show, like a thing that you do on a weekend, not super significant, like just kind of one of the shows to pay the bills. And there was this girl in the audience. She was probably 10 years old. This would have been 4 years ago, maybe. I think I was just turning 17. And she knew every single word to every single song that I played. In like all my original songs, she knew every single word. And I will never forget that day. Like, I had never met her before in my life. I've stayed in contact with her to this day, which is super awesome. But just like I didn't know who she was, and I was going to do this normal show, and then out of nowhere comes this girl who just like knows all of my original songs. And that was such an incredible moment for me. I will never forget it. One of the best moments as a songwriter, definitely, hands down.
I think whenever you can have that connection and influence to, especially, I don't know, maybe I'm just showing favoritism towards little girls because I see myself in them, but just to be that kind of role model, that female role model for them on stage, it's such a cool feeling.
It really is. Like I could barely keep singing because I just I wanted to smile and laugh and freak out the whole time, but I had to keep. It was so hard, but I loved it.
I should have mentioned that was a great question. Came from Johnny Deller. Now we have a next public question from Sky Catnip. Great name. Where do you guys get inspiration for new songs when you're unsure about what to write about? If you get a bit of writer's block or something.
For me, in the shower or in the bathroom, usually, I don't know. Or when I'm driving, I don't know, like somehow like things just, or in the middle of the night, just like that's usually the three places where I get the ideas that kind of come out of nowhere. And then if I'm really stuck especially if I'm in Nashville, one of my favorite things to do is to go and see live music, or if you can't do that right now, obviously, then I would say just try to check out live music online, and then you can kind of like pull different, even just a word, even if someone just says a word in a song or while they're speaking, sometimes that just triggers something.
Rob, maybe where do you get your inspo? You're on mute.
You're muted.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've got vacuuming going on behind me, so I'm like, anyway, I pull a lot of inspiration from literally living experiences. So I tend to put myself in questionable circumstances and live a little risky sometimes so that I can get like some hella good lyrics going on. And that's pretty much how I've always lived, like vacations and trips and anything I can do to create inspiration. Like I bought a Jeep and I wrote a song about, you know, escaping on buying a Jeep and stuff like that. It's just whatever you can do to really inspire yourself and to get those feelings of like, you know, anything that really inspires you, those amazing feelings of life, you know.
How about you, Owen?
Inspiration comes from everywhere for me. Like I'm very attentive to situations, and you know, I'm the type of guy where if I ever get writer's block, I'm absolutely okay with walking away from the song and coming back to it later, because the last thing I want to do is force lyrics that I grow to hate down the line. So if I get writer's block, then I mean, you know what? Okay, we'll stop here and we'll do something else, or just walk away completely to give your mind time to rest before you get back to it. For me, I personally draw a lot of inspiration from my personal life. You know, outside of music, I'm a father of 5 kids. You know, I'm married. There's just things in my personal life that I feel like I could gain a lesson from. You know, maybe it's a conversation that I have with my son where he says something that provokes a thought, and I'm like, okay, let's grab the pen and paper and go. Right. So it's just realizing that there's no boundaries, no holds barred when it comes to creativity. Anything can spark an idea. You can stub your toe and create the next hit song out of the process of stubbing your toe, right? So keep an open mind and be attentive to everything going on around you.
Tori?
So a couple of things. One, definitely resonate with the songs in the middle of the night. I have so many weird voice memos in my phone that you can't even like decipher what I'm trying to say. It's literally just like, and then that's it. That's all that it is. I can't use them, so I don't know why I keep trying. But that's definitely one thing. I really tend to draw inspiration from the real things happening in my life. Like I had something really significant happen in my life last winter, and it was songwriting is how I process things. Like it's really my method of like feeling my way through something and actually understanding it and like getting over things. So I literally I knew that there was this song that I wanted to write, but it was so hard for me to write it that I literally sat at the piano and I worked on it for 5 minutes a day for literally 4 months. And it came out, and I think it's one of my favorite songs that I've ever written. But like I pull from like the really intense things in my life going on. And that tends to be a lot of it. But also, if I'm struggling with inspiration, I really love reaching out to co-writers and like seeing what they've got going on and then digging into that. Like if I can't come up with something on my own, I love hearing somebody else's story and then writing it from my perspective. So that's another thing that I like to do.
Yeah. I think like when I'm stuck for ideas, yes, I do tend to write based on personal experience. But some of the songs like on my album, for instance, are not from my personal experience, but it's just like either somebody else's story, like you just said, or it's just fun and kind of what I was feeling that day. So, but I don't know where I read this one somewhere, but it was you can even read a newspaper or like an article or something and just like pick random words from there and see if you can even write something from that. Like that's so sometimes they say to practice that way if you're completely stuck, but yeah.
I think the other thing too is to recognize that songwriting is a muscle and you have to practice with it. So like even what I did for a year just to get better at songwriting was I used a random word generator and I got a word like you suggested, and then I tried to write a song about it, even if it was like a 30 second something, and most of them totally sucked. Like they were stupid. I wrote a song about a dump truck once, but like practicing it, because then you can turn it on and turn it off. Like you can walk into a co-writing session or walk into the studio and turn it on to write the song, and it's there. And then once you leave, you turn it off and you get on with your life.
So do you guys have like a kind of set songwriting structure where you might come up the words first and then the music after, or does it come at once, or do you do the music first, or is it different all the time?
Rob? You're muted.
I was muted again. I think for me it's different all the time. Like I always I try to change things up on purpose though. So I don't ever want to just rely on like my one formula or anything. I always want to try to challenge myself to create something different, I think.
Yeah. Owen?
Yeah, I echo with Rob because I don't stay true to one specific style, because switching it up, approach a song a different way. You know, sometimes I may start with chords. One day I may start with the melody first. I may not know words. Maybe I just hear a melody, and like Tori, I may record it in my phone and come back to it later until words come. Sometimes I get the lyrics right, the melody around it, but I kind of try to embrace it all, because every process leads to a different ending, and what you want is diversity within your music. You don't want people that you're too predictable, like, oh, there goes an O sound song, so you know he's gonna do this, and then at this point in the song he's gonna do that, and you know I kind of like switching it up as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tori?
I have to say I tend to do the same thing over and over again, but in different ways. I really struggle with writing lyrics without music and writing music without lyrics. Simply because in my mind they kind of support each other, right? Like the accompaniment for what I'm trying to say directly correlates to what I'm saying, right? So I've tried it, and I really, and it's something I want to get better at. I really struggle with writing lyrics by themselves because I can't, there's nothing to ground me in it. So like I always write it together, but it's something that I'm trying to improve.
Cool. So
There's it's
sorry,
sorry.
Kelsey, go ahead. Go ahead, Kelsey. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. There's sometimes when I'm writing, I'll kind of do what Tori was saying. Is it would be like a word, and then like it's more you start with like oh, I want to stay, and then it would be like every other word, and like and then you kind of work it out to like make it actually a real sentence. But you do hear, it's weird because I do tend to hear words with melody at certain points, and then you kind of fill in the gap. It's kind of like a game of Scrabble, and you just kind of have the words, and then you fill in the blanks. But I prefer to start with a concept first. Because then it kind of just gives you a direction of like what kind of mood you want to bring it in. Like one of the coolest songs I've been a part of co-writing is called my co-writer brought in the idea. She said that suit don't suit you, and we were all like, oh, that's kind of kinky. And then our other co-writer, and this is the beauty of co-writing, is our other co-writer just said, you know what, I see this as like a funeral song. Like I'm looking down at my grandfather, and he's wearing a suit, and he's been a farmer his whole life, and that suit don't suit you. And it's just like when he said that, we're like, okay, we have to write that song today. and that's probably the most powerful song I've ever written. So yeah, it's just like you never, and you always go into a write, especially a co-write, with an open mind that way, and then you never know what you're gonna get out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think we will do one more public question and one more emerging artist question to end the evening of this Q&A. So this public one comes from Kyle Osman, 1993. Good year, great year. What is it like to be with your band and perform live? Start with you, Kelsey, maybe.
One word: electric. That's all I'll say.
That fits. Owen?
Can you repeat the question?
What's it like to be with your band and perform live, like performing live with a group?
Okay. Well, it's
Oh, you're not on mute there, Rob.
Rob knows. No, it's to be able to be on a stage with multiple people vibing and playing off of each other and forming this picture. It's indescribable, electrifying.
It's 2 for electrifying.
I just wanted to be in Owen's band, that's all. Just saying. I'll provide you some musical background for for me, being on stage with my band is like nothing else. There's no other place that I can get that adrenaline and that connection and that level of energy from anything else. Like that is specifically what I'm born to do. So that's why I feel that way, and I know that my guys all feel that way as well. It's just like a light switch. You just turn it on and it's insane. It's just on. It's what it's what we love the most, right?
Tori?
And sorry about the guitar.
It's okay, you're auditioning. So for me, I think it really depends. Now, and I come at this from, like, I'm not a part of a band, I have a band, right? So it's a bit of a different perspective. I think if you're with the right band, if you're with the right people, it's magic. Like, as Rob was mentioning, like, you put on your guitar, you stand up a little taller, and then you walk on the stage like you own the world, and it's the best feeling. But when you're with people who you don't like jive with, it can feel really awkward and bumpy and like not that awesome. So I think once you find the right people, it, like, electric is the right word. It's like there's electricity coursing through your veins. But you have to find the right people to be able to do that, because you totally play off each other for the show, especially like with this stage performance, like interacting with each other and being like really engaged in what's going on is like the best thing. But I like, the last thing that I want is to be like trying to like vibe with somebody on the stage and be like, give me something, let's create a moment here, and then they're just like standing here like, oh, I'm sorry, you came over to my side, why? Like, no. No, that makes me feel icky. So I think with, like, when you have the right people, it is like nothing else, but you have to have the right people to have that. So I just want to preface it with that. Like, it's awesome.
Totally true. One bad apple in the band, and I think, well, I would assume that we've all experienced it. One bad apple will destroy every bit of vibe or mojo of a band for sure. And bye-bye.
It's so
And they're gone.
It's so cool to when you do have those awesome people, and I'm so fortunate to have that, is to be able to also rely on those people, and then it's more, it's teamwork. Like, it's never just you, even though you're the name, you're the front person. It's us, it's we, and
Absolutely.
and I really it's a team, and then when you go to play on stage,
You lose her
Did
too?
we lose
Bringing
Kelsey?
it, and
Oh, there we go.
it's just so cool.
Okay, so we got time for one more question, I think, and I have to say it's a doozy. So brace yourselves, guys. It's a deep one. What does music mean to you? Yeah, went there.
Everything.
Yes.
I'm
Rob?
Music to me means, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to beat everything, Owen. Thanks. Music to me is literally life. Like I made a choice a long time ago to not live my life without music, and I can't live any other way.
Kelsey, are you there still?
I think she's reconnecting.
Okay. Tori, you want to maybe give your answer then?
I think she's trying to dodge the question.
Yeah.
Totally.
For me, music is the tools that I can use to connect with people in the world around me. It's a language that I'm fortunate enough to speak at somewhat, and the ability to speak with other people through that is pretty magical. So music, like, it is everything, and it is my life, but it's so much more than that. Like, it's who I am. Like, it drives what I do, and it facilitates how I feel and like how I live my life. Try and get deeper than that, Kelsey.
okay. So what was the question?
It's a doozy.
Sorry, I got in like the middle of that.
That's okay. What does music mean to you? Yeah.
What does music mean to me? Oh, geez. Well, music has just always been there. It's just been the one constant thing in my life. I started out as a dancer. Actually, I was a Highland dancer originally, and so obviously you're dancing to music, and you're letting that inspire you. And then I had to give up dancing because of injuries. So then, but music is just always come in some form or another, and just kind of impacted my life in a way that I couldn't explain. And then being on stage is just goes hand in hand with that. It's that same feeling of just like there's just nothing else like it. So yeah, I don't know. Music is just my livelihood in every form, and literally and figuratively. I think.
Awesome. Well, I think that concludes our very first live stream Q&A here at OMCI. I want to thank our amazing panel of artists. We have Tori Hathaway, Kelsey Main, Owen Lee, and Rob Watts, and our wonderful producer behind the scenes, Josh Kotva. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm Braden Folks, and I think we'll be back Tuesday with another one of these, if I'm not mistaken.
Next week.
Yes, we will. Next week. Okay. And that concludes it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Take care, guys. With pleasure.